And so with that said, I just want to welcome Armin Assadi.
Awesome. How are you guys doing? My name again is Armin Assadi. I am from the Islamic Republic of Iran. I have no terroristic affiliations. There's no bombs strapped. You guys are all safe. This is a safe scenario. I know it sounds like we're speaking Arabic, but I promise we're not. And there was no jihadi talks of any kind going on. I was born shortly after the Islamic Revolution had taken over Iran. Became very antagonistic towards anyone that wasn't Muslim, so they were trying to kill basically our entire family. I have 13 martyrs in my family. We eventually escaped on foot across the desert, climbed a mountain with no climbing gear into Pakistan to live in a top-notch, very high-quality, high-class slum for 17 months. And they had great peanuts for meals. And we spent quite a bit of time there. I didn't even know we were broke. I had a great time, so don't feel bad. I just flew kites all day long. And it was an awesome experience for me, but eventually we got a religious refugee pass through the United Nations, and we didn't know which country we were going to end up in. And luckily we got to go to the greatest country I've ever seen in my entire life, and we got to come to the United States of America. Unfortunately, they sent us to Minneapolis. That's why I'm a Vikings fan, because I didn't know any difference, and I have these loyalty issues, so I have to deal with never winning a Super Bowl. But no big deal at all, because you guys are Packer fans, and I just win Super Bowls by having Hall of Fame quarterbacks all the time. No big deal. Anyway, so shortly after coming to America, you know, I don't know how to explain the transition to America to help people understand what this country is about and how valuable it is. I'll say this, after living in the country that I was born in, and my parents were born in, and they've served in, and they got educated in, everything happened in that country. And to have that country constantly try to kill you because you can't religiously align on some whatever theology that they're trying to cram down your throat, that they're constantly trying to kill you for that, to come to a country that doesn't know you, you weren't born here, you have no loyalty to them, but they bring you, they accept you and say you have freedom and we will help you get engaged into this lifestyle. You have no idea what that means. You have no idea how significant it is. And to this day, my family and I, we cannot go to a sporting event and watch and listen to the national anthem without crying. We cry every time, because the first time my family and I realized we were free is when my dad started crying, and we didn't know why he was crying. He was just looking off into the distance and said, "Dad, why are you crying?" And he said, "Son, you see that flag right there?" And I said, "Yes." He says, that flag right there means that we're finally free, and we are free to be who we are. I wasn't even planning on saying this, but and it's probably a little premature to even mention this, but a buddy of mine who runs a nonprofit that'll go unnamed, we have an event coming up in 2020, and it's going to be a national tour with a very well-known country singer, and what we want to do is welcome home every Vietnam vet. And I know that sounds weird, but when Vietnam vets came home, they didn't get the same welcome that my friends got when they came home from Iraq and Afghanistan. So we just want to do a big national welcome home tour for Vietnam vets. And if that's anything you guys are interested in, because this is more complex, more expensive, more involved than anything we have ever done, and we need all the help that we could possibly get. So if you have any interest in it, please come talk to me afterwards, because again, this is beyond us, it's bigger than us, and we need all the support that we can get. But regardless of how much support we get, this thing is going to happen, because these guys deserve it. All right, back to my life story. I'll make this very quick. Came to America, lived a normal life. When I was 11, had a friend. I thought his mom was dead because his mom was never around. So my natural assumption is mom must be dead, because in Iran, if the other parent wasn't there, it's because they died, right? So we're hanging out one day, car pulls up, and he's interacting with some lady. They were way too chummy together. So I was like, who is that? And he's like, that's my mom. And I'm like, I thought your mom was dead. And he's like, why would my mom be dead? And then that's when I found out divorce. Never in my life have I heard of divorce. That was the first time I found out what divorce was. And I thought Americans were nuts. What? Why would you separate from yourselves? Who does that? And I judged the crap out of American culture. And I thought, these people are crazy. And then when I was 15, my parents started a divorce process. So all that judgment I cast out, I started just eating it, and it was delicious. And I lost it because my whole, everything that you grow up in Iran is just family-centric. I mean, it's like, if there's a true religion in Iran, it's family. Everything is about your family. That's why everybody has to be a doctor or an engineer. Those are your only two options. Even if you go to business school, you're going to be a doctor or an engineer at some point in your life, right? It's just because it's a representation of the family. He's the only one laughing because he knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, so when I lost that, I kind of had this crazy, deep longing to find another family. I know that sounds crazy, but this is 16-year-old logic. So I know you're trying to apply adult knowledge to this, but I was 16 trying to figure out, how do I find family again? And in that moment, I realized, hey, I remember these friends that I had back in growing up in the hoods of Minneapolis. I'm just going to start hanging out with them because we relate. We're all different culture. We're all first generation America. You know, English was my fifth language. You know, they're usually third, fourth language was English for them. So we just had a lot of ways that we could relate and bond and be friends in levels that I couldn't in suburbia, right? And so I started hanging out with them and eventually got into criminal activity. By the time I was 19, we got organized. By the time I was 21, I made my first $1 million in criminal activity. By the time I was 26, I was a crime boss of a nationally syndicated organized crime group that spanned from Nebraska to Pennsylvania, where we're doing about $200 million of revenue in cash every single year. Eventually got saved in a church, and I had left that old life. I know just 20 questions just came up, and I know every question you guys are thinking about. We can discuss them after this. After I got saved, I started going through an indictment process. I was supposed to go to prison for a very, very long time. Had my sentencing. They found me guilty, but they didn't give me any prison time. No, I did not cooperate. It was a version of my miracle story. We're not going to get into that either. Yes, I know the questions you guys are thinking about that as well. We can talk about that later too. Anyways, I was expecting to go to prison, but I didn't, so I called the pastors at my church. They said, what happened? How are you calling us? Why are you not in prison? I said, I don't know why I'm not in prison, but I'm not in prison. They're like, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to come intern for you guys. He said, we don't have an intern program. I said, you do now. So that's happening, and then they literally let me intern for them. I interned for them for about 1.5 years, and then they hired me on, and they put a convicted felon into the children's ministry. Huh? Yeah, that's a true story. And I just kind of went up the ranks, eventually became a senior director, and I was consulting churches all around the country. I've consulted over 100 churches. I have helped plant 35 churches. Even after I left that, I kept working with churches, but I left because one of our elders was a VP of Boston Scientific. He ran their HR, and after mentoring me for a while, we decided, hey, we should launch this business in healthcare. So I left church, he left his big corporate job, we launched a business, we built it to a $60 million valuation, and we thought we were golden. Our projections were us having an exit of $1.2 billion. So we thought, man, this is going to be amazing. And then he had complete kidney failure, almost died, killed the business, but he survived. So better win than 1.2. And anyways, I share all this as briefly as I could and as fast as I could. I just wanted to machine gun it because it's really not that important. The whole purpose of me sharing all my background is to say I have seen a lot in my short amount of time. I've seen good family life, I've seen good education, I've seen living in the slums, I have seen living on welfare in America, but let me tell you, welfare here and poverty here versus poverty over there, this is a good place, let me tell you, people. I've made millions, I've been in the church world, I preach to the church world, I've been in the business world working with doctors and business executives, I've worked with politicians, and I've touched almost every facet of life, every culture, every industry, and at the end of it, I realized there's something that's so weird that connects everybody, and it's not that positive of a thing. And I realized that one thing is that every single human being, regardless of your religion, color, ethnic background, age, status, income, whatever it is, everybody is a liar. Everybody is a liar. There's not a single person in this room that doesn't lie. And that sounds like a totally antagonistic statement to make and probably going to get punched by somebody, but I promise that's not my goal. The reality of that is that the person that we lie to the most is ourselves. We lie to ourselves on such a regular basis, you guys would be shocked if you saw the research on it. It's amazing how much you guys have heard the term negative self-talk, right? You guys, hands up if you heard of it, right? So that's one of the ways that we would consider us lying to ourselves, because how often is our negative self-talk actually reality, right? I mean, how often do you tell yourself, I'm this low-life piece of crap, worthless, blah, 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 blah. Hey, that's not true, right? But we believe that in those situations. So the reason I'm saying that we're all a liar is not to say, hey, you guys are all just going around saying I make $1 million and drive a Ferrari, that kind of lying. There's a different lie, and I think it's more important. And the reason behind it is one thing. Can you guys guess what that one thing is? The thing that forces us to lie to ourselves and about ourselves. What would you guess it is? No wrong answers. I just want you guys to think and interact with me. What would you guess? Yeah, all right. You guys have heard this message before. Whatever. Just ruin it. It is shame, though. It is shame. And shame, absolutely, shame. And all the people that done the research around shame, and it's shame and vulnerability, here's one thing that they would all agree on. They would say this. They would say that shame is the biggest killer of destiny in our society. Shame is the #1 culprit. If you're wondering, hey, what's killing your goals? What's killing your aspirations? And don't just think work, don't just think finance, don't just think status, don't just think title. But you have goals. Every single person has goals, and it goes beyond career. It goes beyond those things. It goes to what are my goals within my marriage? What are my goals within my parenting? What are my goals within my faith and my spirituality? What are my goals with my body, right? Everybody knows they should eat a salad, but we're all gonna eat a steak. Or bacon, because I just love bacon. Right? But it's those weird things, regardless of what we know or what we want, there's these things that we have, and those things are those goals that we have around these things. They're constantly getting hit against something, and the thing that we're hitting up against is shame. So even if you talk to people about weight gain and them trying, and it sounds so dumb, right? But honestly, one of the biggest things they've realized in research of why people cannot be successful through their diets, why they can't be successful in losing weight and keeping weight off, they honestly comes back to shame. Most people just keep eating because they're ashamed, and they don't. It's the weirdest cycle. You would never assume that it'd be shame that's such a killer, but it honestly is shame. And all this stuff that I'm about to share with you is based on the research done by Brené Brown, who's the foremost thought leader on the topic of shame and vulnerability. So you don't have to take my word for it. She's amazing. She's a pretty hardcore Christian, but if you do look her up, she does swear a little, but she loves Jesus. So yeah, good luck with that. If you're offendable, I wouldn't watch her. So here's the thing. So they during this research that they were doing, they had to figure out, okay, so if shame is such a killer, what does a human being require to do to start the process of killing shame in their life so they can actually go and pursue the real, deep, true desires of their hearts? And after all this research that they've done, I mean, this woman has literally written 16 books on this one topic, okay? So it's not simple. It's very complex, but I'm simplifying it. So they realized the one thing that people require to be able to at least begin the process of killing shame, they realized it's this. They need to be vulnerable. To start the process of killing shame, every single human being needs to engage in the act of vulnerability. And I know that sounds crazy, but here's how she says it. She says, they were answering the question is, why do we need to be vulnerable? She said, because vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. It is the source of hope, empathy, accountability, and authenticity. If we want greater clarity in our purpose or deeper and more meaningful spiritual lives even, vulnerability is the path. Okay, and that sounds like an opinion, but understand that's a statement coming from a lot of research, okay? But here's the weird thing they realized. You guys have heard this concept where they say darkness and light cannot coexist in the same space, right? Sounds very basic, but you guys have heard that, right? So they use that same thought and they say shame and vulnerability cannot coexist. Like light and darkness cannot coexist, shame and vulnerability cannot coexist. So if you are dealing with shame, which 100% of us are, and you have to kill shame with vulnerability, but they can't coexist, how in the world do you actually do that? That just sounds like a dumb Mission Impossible, right? So here's where it got a little crazy. They had to get a little bit deeper and to figure out, okay, what is the antidote to shame? But before they could, they said, let's figure out what are these societal norms that feed every single person this idea, this impact of shame. What is causing it? What is the catalyst to it? What is the root of the shame? So here's what they figured out. They said, okay, let's figure out what are the societal norms of men and women. Okay, since this is predominantly men, we're just gonna focus on men, okay? So what do men need to do to conform to male norms? That's the question they asked. Okay, I'll say that one more time. What do men need to do to conform to male norms? Here's the 4 things they came down with. You guys ready for this? And if you agree that it is a societal norm, would you just do me a favor and raise your hand, okay? If you don't agree, don't raise your hand. Societal norm number 1 that men have to conform to in our society is this: always show emotional control. As a man, you always show emotional control. Right? Okay. Societal norm number 2 that you have to conform to. Work is first. Right? Based on society, not your church. Okay? Number 3, pursue status. You should just all raise your hands. This is Facebook generation. You guys just, yeah, sorry. And then number 4 was weird because it was just kind of one word that they threw out there, and it was just violence. For men to feel normal in our society, it requires violence. And It's a weird thing. I'm not going to punch anyone anywhere. Well, I think I might be able to take you a little bit. But no, I don't want to find out either. So here's the weird thing. Let's just focus on one of those things, right? There's 4 things. Let's just focus on one of them to break down this shame cycle, okay? The work is first. So let me ask you guys a question. Please engage with me. If work is first, what is not first? Say it again. God. What else? Family. What else? And break down family for me. Is there one part to family? Is it just all inclusive, or how do? Wife and kids. Wife and kids. Okay. So so far we got God cannot be first if work is first. Your wife cannot be first if work is first. Your kids cannot be first if work is first. Anything else? Health. Your health cannot be first if work is first. What else? Friends cannot be first if work is first. What was that? Ourselves cannot be first if work is first, okay? So let's just break this down, right? And I heard church and I heard God, so let's dive into that a little bit and just get into the messiness of even that, right? You go to church because you're a good Christian guy or whatever religion you might be, right? You go to church and you hear this theology that's pushed to you, and it says God is first, God is first, God is first. And you say, yes, God is first, God is first, God is first. But then they tell you, I can tell what your number one priority is based on your calendar, based on your checkbook, right? You guys have heard that, right? And all of us would probably, for the most part, fail that test of God being first, right? And then so you think, oh gosh, I don't really put God first, and I really love God, but I don't because I'm always working. So you have the shame cycle of not being able to put God first because of the priority that's pushed to you in a church circle. But then you come to work and it's work is first. So if God is first, your family is first. If you're doing anything other than working your absolute butt off to be the highest title, the highest paid, the most recognized, most credentialed, most educated person in that workforce, you're lazy. You're weak. You're a chump. Man up. Man up. Get to work. Do it. Put your head down and get it done, right? You get all these things thrown at you. It is a lose-lose situation. It's a dichotomy that would make anybody go insane. So we think we can get out of this shame cycle, but it's honestly constant. And if you think about it, let me just throw this question out there. How many of you guys would raise your hand and confidently say, man, my wife absolutely loves knowing that she's my number 2. No? Right? Like, your kids, I go home every day and I tell little Johnny, I don't even know if you guys have little Johnnies, but I go home and to my little Johnny and say, little Johnny, I love you so much after I'm done with work, but I really love work more than you. That's a confidence builder for that little Johnny, right? But the reality is we do that. We do that all the time. And I'm not saying this to shame you guys, but I'm just saying it is literally a cycle of shame. Whether we want to believe it or not, you go home and you think, man, all I want to do is spend time with my family. But then you think, oh, I have to go to work. And you keep going back and forth between these things. My work, my family, my God, my status, my credibility, my whatever. It is a lose-lose situation. So we can sit here and be like, hey, I'm so confident that everything's good. I don't actually deal with shame. You do. You do deal with shame. Every single one of us deals with shame. And here's the weird thing about this situation. That they got to the point where they said, okay, we need to figure out what are the 3 ingredients that make up shame. So and they put it in this way. They said if we were to put shame in a petri dish, what 3 ingredients would allow shame to grow exponentially? What would you guys guess those ingredients might be? What causes the cycle of shame? Guilt. That's really good. What else would you say?
Not good enough.
Not good enough. That's really good. What was that? Failure. That's a really good one. So here's what they said is the 3 ingredients to grow shame exponentially. They said here's the 3 ingredients that it requires: secrecy, silence, and judgment. Guys, catch that? Secrecy, silence, and judgment. And just remember how judgment works, right? It's not just you judge others and they judge you. The person that you judge the most is actually yourself. Psychologists will empirically show that to you. The person that you judge the most is you, okay? So then they said, okay, if we know that what causes the cycle of shame and for shame to grow exponentially, then what is the antidote to shame? What would you guess the antidote to shame is? Say that again?
Being open.
Being open? Yep, that's a good answer. What else would you guess?
Give yourself grace.
Give yourself grace. That's really good. And that's very true. One more guess. Say that again.
Identity.
Absolutely. Yep. Those are all things I would have said myself. But here's what they came down to. They said the antidote to shame is this. Empathy.
What is it?
Empathy. The antidote to shame is empathy. The weird thing about that statement is empathy isn't something you can give yourself. Empathy is something that's required from other people. Right? So remember what we said, okay, if you're dealing with shame, the one thing that it requires for the shame process to end is that you need to be vulnerability, but they said vulnerability and shame cannot coexist. The reason people are not willing to be vulnerable, because most of the time when we're vulnerable, we are shamed. Right? It's a weird process. Even if even we're listening to someone talk to us and they're saying all the right things to us, at the end of the day, it might actually be going completely wrong because they're giving us completely the wrong advice, not even knowing it. It's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. And you know what? They realized this. They said, okay, how do people even show empathy? So they asked the question, if someone is in the middle of the struggle, they're struggling with some addiction, whether it's porn, violence, anger, whatever it might be. You have some addiction, right? Alcohol, it doesn't, regardless of their addiction. They asked the question, what does that person need to hear to actually feel empathy? And they said there's two words a person can hear that's the two most powerful words if they're in the middle of a struggle. Can you guess what those two words are? Guess for me. Two words.
Love.
Love, that's a good one.
Proud.
Proud. Was that you? Proud? Yep, that's another. Two most powerful words. One more, yes.
Yeah, we heard last time.
Yeah, who said that? You heard it last time, or you just guessed it? Wow, well done. So it is. It's me too. That is, of all this research, all these psychologists, all these people coming together to figure out how do we help people who are in the middle of a struggle, help them not continue the cycle of shame, and they figure out it's empathy, but how do you talk to someone and make sure that they don't shame you? And two words, me too. Me too. That's all it came down to, is me too. But you know what the two most common words that you will hear in a scenario where someone coming to you being like, brother, I got a crazy porn issue, right? Just in that situation, there's going to be this really awkward tension and possibly a little nervous laugh, right? You go through these weird things and you know it's a shame cycle, but the two most common words that people will hear, especially in a Christian audience or organized religion audience, is, can you guess? What do you think the two most common words are? I'm sorry, that's a good one. What else? Not me. What else? Give me one more guess. Stop it. You should. And that's what it is. It's you should. You should. The two most common words a person in struggle will hear when they share their struggle with someone else is you should. And I know this is crazy. But I'm going to throw this out there. If somebody is an alcoholic, they probably already know they should stop drinking. I know, crazy. What am I thinking? I know, if someone is a crackhead, they probably know they should stop smoking crack. Crazy, I know. If someone is violent, based on the number of times they've probably been in jail and gotten divorced, they probably know they should stop being violent. You telling them what they should do isn't a revelation. It's not. I'm sorry. It really is not. It's not a revelation to them. Actually, what that does is continue the cycle of shame, and that's why people don't want to be vulnerable, because every time that people are vulnerable, we automatically put ourselves in a position of superiority rather than empathy, whether we know it or not. And that position of superiority makes people never want to be vulnerable because they feel shame. Did you follow with that? I know that was a lot that I just threw in there, so I can repeat that if you guys want. Did you guys catch that, or should I repeat that? Okay, so the issue with every time we say you should, or something to that effect, or when we give advice, when someone comes to us and shares their struggle with us, whether we know it or not, there's a subconscious thing that takes place that in that moment, rather than listening and engaging and relating, the instant you give a word of advice, you should or you should not or whatever it might be, you have positioned yourself in a place of superiority, right? So the reverse of that would be you've put them in a place of inferiority. So when someone comes to you in a struggle and shares with you, and then you immediately go into advice mode, you tell them that they're inferior, you're superior, and let me tell you what you should do, right? We're not aware of it. I'm not sharing this because I'm saying I'm really good at this, you guys should be better at it. That's not my goal. I'm just trying to make everyone aware why we have these shame cycles and why people cannot be vulnerable, because even in our sharing, we are shamed. And we don't even realize it. We don't realize it. And the reason I'm sharing this, okay, and I know this is, this is terrible. Why are you talking about shame? No one likes this topic, but here's why. My best man is a Navy SEAL, dairy farm boy from north central Minnesota, right? This guy is a decorated sniper, okay? And one of the things he says is, unless you know who your target is and where your target is, there's no way you're gonna hit him, right? How many of you guys have shot a gun before? Legally. Your hand went up. There's lots of shares here, don't listen to me. And how many of you guys have shot at a target and hit the target? Right? But how many of you guys could shoot your target and hit your target if you don't know what your target is or where your target is? How do you do that? My best man could not do that. And he's a Navy SEAL and he could not do that, right? So the whole purpose of this really depressing talk is the fact that I want to just show you guys, here's the thing that's eating away at your God-given call, your God-given destiny. And the thing that's eating away at you is this thing called shame. And it's right here. And it's acting and behaving in this way. Kill it. Shoot it. Take it down and give yourself a true chance at pursuing the things that you truly desire and not these things that people define for you. Just because somebody defined success for you as being status, title, and money doesn't mean it's going to make you happy, because I promise you, I made a lot of money. I had a lot of status. I did a lot of things. I went on a lot of trips. And at the end of the day, I wasn't celebrating with joy. I had a Glock to my head trying to figure out, is this the best way to kill myself, or do I make it look like an accident? Don't listen to that. You have to define it for yourself. And to do that, it requires sharing. It requires taking risks. It requires being vulnerable. And that process allows you to kill shame, but you need the people that are sitting around you right now. And in that moment that you start sharing, it requires a community effort of people willing to empathize. And not just tell me what to do. Right? Like, man, you were trying to read your Bible last night and you fell asleep? Me too. That's my nightly ritual. That's how I fall asleep. I'm really good at that. Hey, you were trying to pray and fell asleep? I do that too. I try not to pray in the car because it's a little dangerous. Me too, right? You were just trying to get your wife to just do one simple little thing, but she just refused to do it, and you sat there and you argued with her and you got mad and you got loud with her. How could you? I'm just kidding. Me too. I do it all the time. I argue with my wife all the time. I don't know why. I lose 100% of our arguments, even when I'm right, but I do it. Me too. Me too. Me too. Like you were, this applies to you, big scary guy. You were driving the other day and you had your kid in the backseat of your car and you were going down in the highway and some punk little college kid cut you off and put your kid's life in danger, and you got so mad you wanted to pull in front of him, pull him out of the car and beat the living crap out of him. Me too. That's a true story that actually happened to me 2 years ago. I'm not kidding. But I realized I had a Jesus fish in the back of my trunk, and the hypocrisy of the situation just did not let me do it. I'm not kidding you. Me too. Me too. So if anyone tells you Jesus doesn't save lives, the fish symbol itself saved a life that day. But me too. Me too. Come on. We're living in a society that's literally crying out for a little bit of empathy. They just want to be known. Every single one of us, we just want to be known. We just want to be known for who we really are, and not just our accolades. We live in so much struggle because we're constantly thinking about how we talk about ourselves in a resume format. When the last thing you want to talk about is your resume, and the first thing you really want to talk about is, here's who I really am. Because this might be a little shocking to you, but most people would rather be loved for who they are than to be liked for who they pretend to be. And I would go as far as saying, most people would rather be hated for who they really are by the majority, as long as they have one or two people who truly love them for who they really are. It's the deepest desire of most people's heart. Look around this room real quick. I don't care if you guys know each other or not. I know it's awkward. But one, let me say this. The reason it's even awkward to look around a room, understand, and this is again another depressing statistic, so if you guys ever want depressing statistics, come to me. I'm sure I can help everyone be suicidal by the time you guys are done with me. But here's the weird thing about America. We won a gold medal for something. You want to know what that gold medal was for? It wasn't the Olympics. We are considered the #1 what is the word I'm looking for? Most socially isolated society on the planet. We are the #1 most socially isolated culture on the planet. And that's not just some random hyperbole some Chinese guy came up with and throwing it around, right? Like, there was actual metrics to this. What are the number of minutes that you spend in your car per day? What are the number of miles that you drive? What are the number of minutes that you spend on a mobile screen? What are the number of minutes that you look at a big screen? What are the number of times that you spend, or what is the amount of time that you spend with family and friends? How often do you have people over? What are the what number of times per day or per week do you spend sitting around a dinner table and sharing a meal, right? All these things were used in this metric system, and we came out #1 as the most socially isolated culture on the planet. That is depressing. I know that. And I'm sharing that with you not to depress you, but I'm just saying, if you guys feel that burden, if you guys feel that sinking feeling, and some of you guys are probably massive introverts, and I gotta love that. I just want to live in my own little world. That's great, but I'm telling you, we are dying from our isolation. And social media sure ain't helping, because we're lying to ourselves, pretending like we're actually socializing when we're doing absolutely nothing. I don't know how many thousands of followers I have on Facebook or whatever I have. I don't know 1% of them. I have no idea who they are. Absolutely, that's not socializing. That's nothing. That is, it has now been officially designated as one of the most depressing things in the world as well. Social media is one of the biggest causes of depression in the world right now. And that's not my opinion. That's done by American and Norwegian and Danish and Australian and Chinese and Japanese researchers, neuroscientists, and psychologists. It's literally not social. It is the opposite of social. We're a generation that's desperate for that connection. And I want to end with this story because I'm going way too long because he told me I could. So thank you, Keith. But here's the thing. The thing that radically changed, a low-life, violent, selfish, self-righteous piece of person like me was this one thing, okay? Was I started getting surrounded by these guys when I started looking for a way out of this crap life that I was living. I was suicidal. Literally after throwing myself a party that cost multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars because I wanted everyone to celebrate me. I mean, that's what humble people do. I was the most humble person on earth, so I threw myself a party. That party, I left my own party an hour later to go kill myself. And that was the catalyst to me leaving that life and looking for actual faith and family. In that journey, I started meeting these Jesus-loving, annoying people. But they were just relentless. They were relentless. They were always around me. They're always calling. They're always texting. They're always inviting me to sit around a dinner table, lunch table, or breakfast with them. And no matter how much crazy stuff I told them, they went so far out of their way to make me feel welcome, to make me feel like I belong there. And they went so far out of their way to empathize when they had absolutely no way of empathizing with the guy who was a crime boss in an organized crime syndicate. They're like good old suburbia family. But they did it, and I could not help but fall in love with them. I wanted to spend all my time with them. They filled this void of family for me because I didn't find it in the organized crime world, no matter how many times we threw out the word family. It was not family, it was business. And these people that I barely knew treated me more like family than any of these people that I've known for a decade. But it was like a Me Too culture of people. No matter how crazy I was with them, they didn't look at me like I was disgusting, I was deplorable, I was this, I was that, whatever. They constantly tried to empathize and they sucked me in. And they kept talking about this man, God, confusing deity, man, spirit. I was like, you guys are nuts. What are you talking about? Is this like a, multi-God system? Is this a unit, like, one? I don't understand. It was so confusing. But at some point, they stopped talking about the theology and they started talking about the person. And then I started realizing that this God that these people serve and the reason that they love so well is because they're following a model of a God of the universe who created this entire world, who has all the power that you can ever possibly imagine, and beyond that, he said, I'm going to come down from my throne, being the King of Kings, and I'm going to step down from the gates of heaven, and I'm going to go into the womb of a human being, and I'm going to be born in a poop-filled, smelly manger, laying on a bunch of hay. How many of you have kids? I have two. My second girl just turned 1. This is a morbid question. What would it take to kill a baby? I know, it's a messed up question. What would it take though? Right? I could not feed my child and she would die. I don't even have to do anything violent. Right? I could not put clothes on her and she would die. I could put her in the bathtub and walk away and she would die, right? It really does not take much to kill a baby. Is there a more vulnerable position that you could put yourself in? To come down from heaven as King of the universe into the womb, to come out an infant who pees himself, poops himself, and is completely reliant on other human beings to feed, nurture, shelter, and protect. And then he went on to live a life that none of us could possibly live. He lived a blameless life, but he was tempted like we were tempted. in more ways than I can count. He literally had 40-day fast where he went and fought it out with the devil himself. And at the end of it, he did not fail. He lived a blameless life, and then he died a death that we could possibly not even begin to imagine. When I was about 4 years old, I watched a man get whipped to death in Iran because he was making anti-political statements of the government. And I watched him literally a few feet away from me. This dude got whipped to death. And when I went to wipe away my tears, I realized I was in shock, not crying, and I was wiping away his blood. So when I tell you, I can more than visualize what Jesus went through so that people like me and you can know that we have a God that's not completely unrelatable to us, but we have a God that literally put himself in a position of vulnerability to be tempted. So he could know exactly what you're going through in ways that no other leader has ever put themselves into. And he did that not so we can continue to live in our cycles of shame, but he did that so you can know your shame does not have to kill you. Your struggle does not have to kill you. Your struggle does not have to isolate you. He did all that so you can know that you have a God that is willing to fight for you in a way that he's willing to give himself completely in the most vicious way to die for you so that you can have the boldness, the zeal, the confidence to step up and say, yes, I struggle, but my struggle will not be my identity. He wants to make us have these warrior hearts. He wants us to know our destinies can be had. He wants us to know that the future is what we can grasp and the past is not the thing that defines us. It makes me rage, not because I'm mad, but because I lived in that cycle and still live in that cycle. I'm not talking about this because I'm an expert. I'm talking about this because this is the thing that I've needed most. It saved me to be in a Me Too culture. It saved me to be around a Me Too people. And it saved me, literally saved me, to meet a Me Too God. And I'm not trying to force my theology on you, but I'm saying this because if you need a Me Too relationship and you don't want your first step to be a person, then start with a God that I promise you will not judge you in a way that will make you feel shame. Because I guarantee there's not a single person in this room that deserves hell more than I do, that deserves shame more than I do. There's not a single person in this room that has sinned more than I have. There's not a single person in this room that has done more wrong than I have. And if I have an opportunity with him, if I have a relationship with him, if I have been redeemed by him, then there's no one in this room can sit there and possibly look at me and think that you don't deserve it. So if you need a starting point, man, start with him. And it doesn't have to be now, just some point. It doesn't have to be some religious thing. And if you really want to, man, look at the people around this room. Have a conversation. These guys aren't leading this thing because they got nothing better to do. You know, they're not coming in here being like, man, I'm going to make a lot of money doing this. You know what I'm saying? These guys are doing this because they know this is a need. And the reason this thing works is because it puts you guys in a community that will truly help you achieve your goals in ways that you can't dream or imagine. And I know I'm way too hype. This is like a stoic crowd, and you got some crazy terrorist-looking dude that's way too excitable. But if I want to just give you guys a takeaway, that's it. Just have a Me Too encounter. I don't care what that looks like. Just have a Me Too encounter. If it's a Me Too encounter with God, a Me Too encounter with the people that are sitting around this table, or the Me Too encounter with the leaders of this group, it doesn't matter. Just go have a Me Too relationship. And just remember, your struggle, your shame is not your identity. It is not your identity. It is not your identity. It is not your identity. I will say that 100 times if I have to. Break free. Engage your destiny because you deserve it. And if you don't, I don't. And I don't want to accept that. I know that's selfish. Thank you guys for having me. And again, Vietnam War vets, if you guys are interested in that, I don't care about your clapping. I care about support for that event. So if you guys at all have an inkling of wanting to support that, of helping us, connecting us, or whatever, please come to me. I love you guys. Thank you so much.